Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Steve Perry. He is an author of the Capacity Model and a leader in wealth management and recruiting. And we'll learn from him about his insights on building high performance teams, financial growth, and radical generosity. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thanks, AJ. How are you?
Very good, very good. You're welcome. Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Steve, welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll learn from you about unlocking growth. We'll also talk about the capacity model. It's also the name of your book. We'll learn a lot there about this in this platform. But before that, let's learn a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for creating this forum and so generously inviting me on. So my background, I grew up in Alaska, which is as cold and frustratingly far away from civilization as it can be. My dad he went to the Naval Academy, was in the military, and then worked in human resources. My mom stayed at home raising me and my sister. And I would say we grew up in a little bit below, middle class family. My parents spent most of their money sending my sister and I to the best private Christian education that they could. And so we didn't need anything growing up, but we didn't really have much that we wanted either. And the reason I share that, AJ, is because that forced me to become entrepreneurial very early in my life. If I wanted to play basketball and have basketball shoes, if I wanted to be in a club or, join a program, I had to pay for it. And so I started my first company when I was 15 years old, which I used to pay through high school and college. I had a full ride college scholarship and then graduated about a semester early and started my career right after that in financial services. So I was an advisor for almost 5 years, moved into leadership, became a partner in the firm, was promoted to senior partner. It was at a Fortune 100 company. I was the youngest senior partner, and then ultimately became a managing partner, where I got to run my own firm. We had, by God's grace, a lot of success in that. We doubled the size of the office in a couple of years, and then they promoted me to move to another bigger, larger office. So I spent 17 years as a whole with that Fortune 100 company. But I looked up, AJ, and I said, I am not an entrepreneur. I am an executive. I'm a corporate executive. I get paid a very good living, but I know God's created me for more, and so I need to live to that potential. And to do that, I cannot work for someone else's brand. I have to build my own company. So I left a $900,000 a year job, which if I had just sat there, I'd make $30-40 million over the rest of my career, which a lot of people would love. But I knew, again, I had a calling to build bigger than that. So I left that, and a year and a half ago started the Well Recruiting Solutions, and we've grown to over 40 team members, working with clients all across the United States over the last year and a half, and it's been an incredible journey.
Absolutely, Steve. Thank you for that. So, how should people understand, who is Steve Perry? Is he a financial advisor, long back, or is he a staffing solutions person, or is there more to Stephen Perry because you talk also about radical generosity, talk about faith, you talk about resilience, so many other things. So that's why I thought, let me understand you for the audience from you.
Yeah, so I'll give the LinkedIn answer, right? So I run a recruiting firm. If you need talent that you can't find, you're having a hard time finding, our team will find them for you quickly. But who I am, which is what I know you're asking, about 5 years ago, I created kind of a life statement or a purpose statement, and that is that I'm a bold, encouraging, and generous, which you mentioned, follower of Jesus Christ, who will help fund billions of dollars to grow God's kingdom by leading others to live radically generous lives. And that's truly been, my pointing direction where I've made radical decisions. It's because that's who I knew I was gifted and called to be. And if I'm not able to live to my fullest potential in that calling, my life is in conflict, and I have to make a decision, no matter how tough it is, to change, to move in alignment with that calling.
Right. So can you help us understand this radical generosity, the way you understand it?
Yeah. So there's a few things I would share on that. The first one is I don't say this is not a humble brag. I say it in all genuineness, but I have been more successful than I ever should have been multiple times in my life already. And whether that's, the titles that I've had, the amount of people that I've been able to lead, the growth the companies I've led has had financially. And what I realized in that, AJ, is that that's pretty empty. Like, you get there and you're like, oh, wow, that's it? Oh, well, what else? And so, like, it's pretty shallow to think, all right, well, let me just add 50% or 100% to that goal and do it again. Like, there's only so many times that you can do that and really feel fulfilled without fooling yourself. And so I looked at that and I said, all right, well, what does the Bible say about this? And the Bible says that chasing wealth and success is like chasing the wind. And it says to lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, not treasures on this earth. And so I was like, well, how do you lay up for yourself treasures in heaven? Well, you don't keep the money, you give it to whatever God calls you to do. And that's different for different people, right? People, want to give to maybe medical facilities. People want to give to education institutions. People want to give to people that build wells around the world or solve hunger issues. And so for me, it's funding people who are sharing that good news. So, very practically thinking or speaking, AJ, I created a formula. And I said, I want my heavenly net worth, what I've given away, to be in equilibrium with my earthly net worth. What does my balance sheet say that I have? And so, what that has meant in my life is giving away somewhere between 30 and 60% of our income on an annual basis, where we've given away, well over $1 million. And, our net worth used to be well over $1 million. As we've built this company, it's gone down. But the idea is that I want that to be in equilibrium. Now, the second thing I would say to that, as I made this transition from, where I'm leading a large firm of successful financial advisors, which wear nice suits and drive nice cars and have fancy houses, there was a certain expectation that I portrayed that similar lifestyle. So, we had the Escalade and the Maserati and the $2 million house on the lake and all of those things. When we moved to startup mode, which our company, I've bootstrapped, there's no outside investments. I haven't taken a paycheck from it for the last 15 months, right? So we got rid of that lifestyle. We sold the houses. We sold the cars. We moved into a rental. This is the first time I've worn a suit in probably a year. And the only reason I'm doing that is because my daughter has her first playoff basketball game today that I'm coaching. And so I wanted to wear that for them for the special day. But we simplified our life so much, AJ, and where on my tax balance sheet last year, I lost on paper a lot of money, we were still able to give tens of thousands of dollars away just because that's the heart that we have. And that's what we do it for. That's what gives me joy, and that's what I know my calling is. And so my second point there is, like, a simplified life is just as rewarding. It feels so much lighter, so much easier to do the things that you need to do without all these overhead and expenses and this keeping up with the Joneses, that it makes generosity that much easier as well.
Absolutely. Well said. Simplicity looks very simple, but it can be tough to do it. And when you do it, you really understand that, simplicity is the best way to go. Ultimately, we talk about empowering leaders, and so that they can create a lasting impact. Who are these leaders that you talk about? How do you know these are the leaders who will create lasting impact? Nowadays, a lot of questions are rising. No, our leaders themselves, in every aspect of our life, business also, with the great resignation quite speaking, still very much.
Yeah. So I believe, there's a lot of cliches around it, right? People don't quit a job, they quit a leader. I think there's nothing more exponentially powerful than the ability to replicate yourself through other people and then helping them live to their potential. So it takes a lot of things. One of the things it takes is humility, right? You can't want or need the praise, right? Like a good leader, right, defers all the praise and takes all of the criticism. And I think that today people, especially the generation that's grown up in this digital era, and there's so much interacting like you and I are doing over a computer screen versus, in person, they're hungry for, if they can have a relationship for a mentor, someone that they can look up to, that can give them guidance, give them shortcuts, create something to emulate that they feel is worthwhile and have a physical representation of that. I feel like that's what leadership is. And then, you get to the end of the day, really the end of your life, and you look back and it's like, what do the lives of the people that I led look like? Did I do it for my own gain so I could get more titles and more success and promotions, and maybe to be able to give away more things? Or did I empower them and help them to rise up and do the same thing and then lead others to do that? And so, I've had the privilege of bringing people in from the ground floor in financial advisory firms where they're literally only licensed to sell life insurance, and they're going to their friends and family and having difficult conversations about life insurance, and seen and helped them develop into full-fledged financial advisors, promoted them into leadership positions where now they were recruiting and building their own team of advisors. And then ultimately the company saw their talent and their performance and promoted them to where they're now running their own entire firms and winning national trophies. And so being able to look back and seeing those things, even when I'm not there anymore, it is just a really cool feeling knowing.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's learn from your book now.
Yeah.
The capacity model. So tell us a bit about this inspiration. Writing a book, normally one can get so busy in the things that you have been doing. That book can be the last thing on your list. But how did you get inspired to write a book?
Yeah, great. Thanks for asking that. Most people don't ask that question, and there is a story behind it. So I shared my first office that I was at, where I was the managing partner. I was 30 years old. I got there were 40 advisors. Within 2 years, we had grown to almost 100 advisors. AJ, our prayer every morning as a team was, Lord, help us be so successful that we can't help but point to you as that source of success. And frankly, he did. And I can't do anything but give him honor and glory for that. But what that did was it created capacity. It created margin where things were just running. We had a great leadership team. And so I kind of had time to I need to do something, take a big step. And so is that getting an advanced degree, right? Is it, I didn't know what it was. And so the idea, my coach said, well, have you thought about writing a book? And I was like, I have. He's like, maybe now's the time. So I started it. And then shortly after I started the book, AJ, is when my company said, hey, will you move and take over this bigger region? And so we moved our family to Minnesota. We took over that region, and the book kind of got put on hold. And a handful of months later, COVID hit. And so everyone got sent home, and we were doing this, all day long. And this, you can only do so many of these in a day. I know you probably do a lot. I do a lot. But, when you hit 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these, you're done. And you need something else to do. So it gave me more margin and capacity to finish this book. And so that's what I did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what you did. But what is this capacity model all about? Is it about human capacity, our mental capacity?
Yep.
What capacity are you talking about? It's the right name. I want to understand it in the way you understand it.
Yep, it's fancy, it's intriguing, it makes you, what is he talking about? So the premise of the book, and I open up and talk about it, I say stress is a gift. And it's like, huh? Stress? Are we talking about the same kind of stress? How can stress be a gift, right? And it's easy. You ask anyone, hey, who's experienced stress? And everyone raises their hand, right? Who's experienced stress today? Everybody raises their hand. Well, the next part of that is I say that stress is a gift because it's life telling you it's time to grow. You can't handle any more of what's happening, so you need to grow your capacity. And so I define capacity as the amount of life that you can handle thrown at you up until the point where you begin to say, I'm stressed out. And so your capacity, AJ, is built on 3 pillars. And that is your education, or the learning that you have, the habits that you have in place, and then the relationships that you have. And so if you think of these 3 pillars, right, holding up the ceiling of your capacity, the more you've done to develop each of those pillars, the higher your capacity ceiling is, right? So the more learning you have, the better habits you have, the more relationships you have, your capacity ceiling is higher. But inevitably, we all experience stress. And so we kind of hit our head on that capacity ceiling. And we know we've done it because we say, hey, I'm stressed out. And you've got 2 choices when you experience that stress. The first choice is to go through that cycle of breakdown. And I use the example of marriage, right? We've all had stress in our marriage, right? Arguments or, disagreements, communication isn't going well. And so when you feel that stress, you could go down the breakdown cycle, which says, step one is to be disappointed, right? In the situation, like, hey, my spouse isn't doing this for me, or this isn't how I thought this was going to work out. And if we stay in that for too long, step two is disillusionment. You start thinking, why did I get married to this person in the first place? Like, what? Like, they're never going to change. It's always going to be terrible like this. And then ultimately, if you stay in that for too long, you go to step three, which is the idea of greener pastures, which, by the way, I've shared this when I was in India. I shared this with several groups. They said greener pastures is a term you can use there too. And all that means is, like, you look at your neighbor's lawn and like, oh, that's greener. So you leave where you are and you go over. So in that example, you get divorced. But the problem is, AJ, you never increased your capacity. So it's at the same level. So you start dating again, you get married again, and the same problems are going to cause stress again because you never worked to grow the capacity. It was greener pastures were okay for a season because you re-entered the cycle under your capacity, but soon you're going to get there again. The alternative, instead of going down that breakdown cycle, is to have a breakthrough. And a breakthrough is done by proactively identifying, in this situation, using marriage, for example, do I need to learn more about how to have a good marriage, right? I need more education. Do I need some habits in communicating with my wife, going on dates more often, writing her a letter, getting flat, whatever? Or do we need a relationship? Do we need a counselor? Do we need a mentor to come in and help us in developing this? Each of those three things could be solutions to grow one of those pillars and increase your capacity ceiling, which would then get rid of the stress in that scenario. So that's the book in a nutshell.
Absolutely. So who is this book for? And how does, how do you deal with this capacity? How can I increase my capacity? People talk about that there is a limit to our capacity. Mm-hmm. How we tell that no, there is not a limit. This is where you can expand it.
Yeah. So everyone's limit is way beyond what they can even fathom, right? But you're not going to get anywhere close there. Like, capacity is gained by little incremental changes. It's not like you're not taking quantum leaps in that. And you look back a year, 5 years, 10 years from now, and you say, wow, I never even believed, I didn't think I had that capacity. So to your point there, you're 100% right. Like, everyone's capacity, theoretically it's fixed, but the fixed level is way beyond where you could ever dream that it would be. And so the book, I don't want to say it's for everyone. I've talked to kids, students, CEOs, sales teams, business. I've talked across the board on this topic. It certainly is written from the bent of a business owner or a business entrepreneurial minded person, sales, certainly that kind of mentality, the professional development world, people who are typically working in that. But I mean, we've done it in nonprofits, it's been taught in prisons, it's been taught a lot in different places. And so the application, although in the book, a lot of examples are business examples and financial and entrepreneurial, the application is universal.
Absolutely. There's much to learn from you about all these things, Jim. And I'm sure a lot of people would want to connect with you, learn more from you, about you, and also want to get hold of your book. What's the best way for that to do?
Yeah, so the book's on Amazon. It's, Kindle, paperback, Audible, all of the above. And then I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So I do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. Steve Perry, The Well Recruiting Solutions. I'm not very hard to find. I don't have as many followers as you. So I see you're just about to crack 10,000, which is amazing. Congratulations. We're still working on that, but I'm very active on LinkedIn. Love connecting with people on there. And, the last thing I would say, from a business standpoint, if someone happens to be needing talent for their organization, if they go to hirethewell.com, you don't have to hire us, but I've got a nice little freebie on there, hirethewell.com. It's 10 of the most creative interview questions that you can ask to make sure you get the right hire every single time.
Absolutely. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure.